House will come to order. Please join Representative Mike Lynch in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Please join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mr. Shebel, please call the roll.
Representatives Amabile. Aye. Bacon. Yep. Baisley. Benavides. Burnett. Byrd. Brockenfeld. Basenecker. Bradfield. Caravale. Carver. Catlin. Cutter. Doherty. Duran. Is she here? Rep Duran. Oh. Esgar. Exum. Froelich. Geithner. Gonzalez Gutierrez. Gray. Hanks. Herod. Do we see Herod? Rep Herod? Herod here? Okay. Herod is excused for now. Holtorf. Hooten.
Here.
Judah. Kennedy. Kip. Larson. Lindsay. Lantine. I saw her earlier. Okay, Rep Lantine? No. Okay, she's excused for now. Luck. Oh, is she here? Oh, I didn't. Okay. Hi, Luck. Lynch. McCluskey. McCormick. McKean. McLaughlin. Michelson Janae. Mullica. Neville.
Here.
Ortiz.
Here.
Pelton. Pico.
Here.
Ransom. Rich. Ricks.
Present.
Roberts. Sandridge.
Here.
Sirota. Snyder. Soper.
Here.
Sullivan. Tipper.
Here.
Titone. Valdez A. He's here? Okay. Oh, yeah. Valdez D. Van Beber is excused. Van Winkle. Weissman. Will. Williams.
Here.
Woodrow. No. Woodrow? Hey, there he is. Woog. Young. Did you see her? Representative Young. Okay. Excused for now. Speaker is here. Who was? Herod is here.
With 62 present, 3 excused, we have a quorum. Representative Lynch.
Mr. Speaker, I move that the Journal of Friday, February 18th, 2022 be approved as corrected by the Chief Clerk.
Members, you have heard the motion that the journal be approved as corrected by the Chief Clerk. All those in favor say aye.
Aye. Aye.
All those opposed, no.
No.
The ayes have it. The motion is adopted. Announcements and introductions. Representative Weissman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Somebody really doesn't like the Journal this morning. Judiciary Committee, here are some announcements. We will hear 2 bills today. We will hear 1208 and 1217. Two of the bills on the calendar are being reset to another date, which is to say we will not hear 12:16 and we will not hear 12:26 today. That'll come up in the future. Also, we will be in the Old State Library, the big room across the way today. So in summary, Old State Library, two bills, 12:08, 12:17, 1:30 p.m. Thank you.
Further announcements and introductions. Representative Michelson Janae.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Public and Behavioral Health and Human Services will be meeting today at 1:30 p.m. in room 112. We'll be hearing House Bills 1153, 1113, 1157, and 1167. We will start 1:30 sharp. Don't be late.
Representative Ransom and Representative D. Valdez.
Good morning. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, tomorrow it's Aerospace and Defense Caucus Lunch. Please join us in the Sherman Building on the 6th floor from 11:30 to 1. But also invite your aides and your interns to the caucus lunch and RSVP with Vicki Lee. It's on your desk. Please send an email to RSVP so that we have enough count of individuals who are there and attending, because it is important. And also wanted to invite you to Aerospace Day at the Capitol on March 8th. It's a great, fun, educational day about learning from all kinds of different aspects in aerospace and how we continue to move with innovation here in the state of Colorado.
Representative Ransom.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And this is your chance to be an astronaut when you grow up. Remember, everybody wanted to go to the moon and be an astronaut and have fun out in space. And this is really one of the fun times that you have to go learn about what the aerospace industry does for our state, how many jobs it provides, the workforce, and so many other fun aspects of how it helps our economy. So we do encourage you to come tomorrow, and also, again, as you heard, please do sign up for Aerospace Day at the Capitol. They want to make sure that there's enough material and enough food for everybody. That will be on March 8th, and the email's in your inbox.
Thank you.
Thanks to both of you. Representative Judah.
I have permission to be excused tomorrow on February 23rd.
So approved.
Thank you.
Representative Tatone.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, legislative reception for the American Council of Engineers is tonight at the University Club 5 to 7. There will be some food and drinks, and you can meet your local engineers. So come out and geek out.
Representative McLaughlin.
It's a pleasure to serve with you, Mr. Speaker.
It's an honor to serve with you, Representative McLaughlin.
Good morning, House Education Committee. Tomorrow's agenda has changed a little. We are only listening to House Bill 1032. 1220 will be postponed for another week. And then on Thursday, we have sunset reviews for 4 bills, and we are also listening to 1203, and 1019. We'll see you there. Thanks.
Representative Exum.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. House Transportation and Local Government, we have an exciting afternoon. One bill coming from me, House Bill 1162, so be there. It's exciting.
All right. Seeing no further announcements or introductions, the next order of business is third reading of bills, final passage. Mr. Schiebel, please read the title of the House Bill 1150.
House Bill 1150 by Representatives Bockenfeld and Exum, also Senators Cook and Fields, concerning the elimination of signature requirements for persons who are alleged to have violated certain offenses.
Majority Leader Escar.
Thank you, Speaker Garnett. I move House Bill 1150 on third reading, final passage.
The question before us is the adoption of House Bill 1150 on third reading and final passage. Seeing no further discussion, Mr. Schiebel, please open the machine, and members, please proceed to vote. For those participating online, Representative Williams, how do you vote?
No.
Representative Williams votes no. Representative Neville, how do you vote?
No.
Representative Neville votes no. Representative Pico, how do you vote?
No.
Representative Pico votes no. Representative Sandridge, how do you vote?
No.
Representative Sandridge votes no. Representative Soper, how do you vote?
No.
Representative Soper votes no. Representative Hooten, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative Hooten votes yes. Representative Tipper, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative Tipper votes yes. Representative Ortiz, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative Ortiz votes yes. Representative Ricks, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative Ricks votes yes. Please close the machine. With 53 aye votes, 11 no votes, and 1 excused, House Bill 1150 is adopted. Co-sponsors. Please close the machine. Mr. Shebel, please read the title of the House Bill 1169.
House Bill 1169 by Representatives Michelson, Janae, and Soper concerning amending the elements of sexual assault to prohibit sexual misconduct without consent. Oh, and Senator Winter, excuse me.
Majority Leader Escar.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move House Bill 1169 on third reading, final passage.
The question before us is the adoption of House Bill 1169 on third reading and final passage. See no further discussion. Mr. Shebel, please open the machine and members please proceed to vote. Representative Williams, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative Williams votes yes. Representative Neville, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative Neville votes yes. Representative Pico, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative Pico votes yes. Representative Soper, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative Soper votes yes. Representative Sainridge, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative Sainridge votes yes. Representative Hooten, how do you vote? Unmute.
Yes.
Representative Hooten votes yes. Representative Tipper, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative Tipper votes yes. Representative Ortiz, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative Ortiz votes yes. Representative Ricks, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative Ricks votes yes. Please close the machine. With 64 aye votes, 0 no votes, and 1 excuse, House Bill 1169 is adopted. Co-sponsors. Representative Hooten, Tipper, co-sponsor. Please close the machine. Mr. Shebel, please read the title of Senate Bill 22.
Senate Bill 22 by Senators Lee and Gardner, also Representatives Snyder and Soper, concerning the enactment of the Colorado Revised Statutes 2021 as the positive and statutory law of the state of Colorado.
Majority Leader Escar.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move Senate Bill 22 on third reading, final passage.
The question before us is the adoption of Senate Bill 22 on third reading and final passage. Seeing no further discussion, Mr. Shebel, please open the machine and members please proceed to vote. Representative Williams, how do you vote?
No.
Representative Williams votes no. Representative Neville, how do you vote?
No.
Representative Neville votes no. Representative Pico, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative Pico votes yes. Representative Sainridge, how do you vote?
No.
Representative Sainridge votes no. Representative Soper, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative Soper votes yes. Representative Hooten, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative Hooten votes yes. Representative Tipper, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative Tipper votes yes. Representative Ortiz, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative Ortiz votes yes. Representative Ricks, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative Ricks votes yes. I can double check that. Representative Pico, can I just double check that I heard you properly? Representative Pico, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative Pico votes yes. And Representative Soper,
Yes, Mr. Speaker.
thank you very much. Representative Duran. Please close the machine. With 52 aye votes, 12 no votes, and 1 excuse, Senate Bill 22 is adopted. Co-sponsors. Please close the machine. All right, members, just a reminder, we're on third reading. Let's make sure we keep it down on third reading. Mr. Shebel, please read the title of Senate Bill 62.
Senate Bill 62 by Senators Lee and Gardner, also Representatives Soper and Weissman, concerning procedures of the Committee on Legal Services.
Majority Leader Escar.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move Senate Bill 62 on third reading, final passage.
The question before us is the adoption of Senate Bill 62 on third reading and final passage. See no further discussion. Mr. Shebel, please open the machine and members please proceed to vote. Representative Williams, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative Williams votes yes. Representative Neville, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative Neville votes yes. Representative Pico, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative Pico votes yes. Representative Sainridge, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative Sainridge votes yes. Representative Soper, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative Soper votes yes. Representative Hooten, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative Hooten votes yes. Representative Tipper, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative Tipper votes yes. Representative Ortiz, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative Ortiz votes yes. Representative Ricks, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative Ricks votes yes. Please close the machine. With 63 aye votes, 1 no vote, and 1 excuse, Senate Bill 62 is adopted. Co-sponsors. Please close the machine. Mr. Shebel, please read the title of the House Bill 1028.
House Bill 1028 by Representatives Gray and Hooten, also Senators Winter and Priola, concerning statewide regulations of persons approaching controlled intersections who are not operating motor vehicles.
Majority Leader Escar.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move House Bill 1028 on third reading, final passage.
The question before us is the adoption of House Bill 1028 on third reading and final passage. See no further discussion. Mr. Shebel, please open the machine and members please proceed to vote. Representative Williams, how do you vote?
No.
Representative Williams votes no. Representative Neville, how do you vote?
No.
Representative Neville votes no. Representative Pico, how do you vote?
No.
Representative Pico votes no. Representative Sandridge, how do you vote?
No.
Representative Sandridge votes no. Representative Soper, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative Soper votes yes. Representative Hooten, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative Hooten votes yes. Representative Tipper, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative Tipper votes yes. Representative Ortiz, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative Ortiz votes yes. Representative Ricks, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative Ricks votes yes. Please close the machine. With 44 aye votes, 20 no votes, and 1 excuse, House Bill 1028 is adopted. Co-sponsors. Please close the machine. Mr. Shebel, please read the title of House Bill 1076.
House Bill 1076 by Representatives Lontine and Will, also Senator Buckner, concerning the ability of a hearing aid provider to perform services through the use of telehealth.
Majority Leader Escar.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move House Bill 1076 on third reading, final passage.
The question before us is the adoption of House Bill 1076 on third reading and final passage. See no further discussion. Mr. Shebel, please open the machine and members please proceed to vote. Representative Williams, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative Williams votes yes. Representative Neville, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative Neville votes yes. Representative Pico, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative Pico votes yes. Representative Sandridge, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative Sandridge votes yes. Representative Soper, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative Soper votes yes. Representative Hooten, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative Hooten votes yes. Representative Tipper vote, how do you vote?
Yeah.
Representative Tipper votes yes. Representative Ortiz, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative Ortiz votes yes. Representative Ricks, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative Ricks votes yes. Please close the machine. 64 aye votes, 0 no votes, and 1 excuse. House Bill 1076 is adopted. Co-sponsors. Representative Soper, co-sponsor. Representative Ortiz, Tipper, co-sponsor. Representative Ricks, co-sponsor. Please close the machine. Mr. Shebel, please read the title of the House Bill 1072.
House Bill 1072 by Representatives Will and Roberts, also Senators Donovan and Simpson, concerning the Habitat Partnership Program.
Majority Leader Escar.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move House Bill 1072 on third reading, final passage.
The question before us is the adoption of House Bill 1072 on third reading and final passage. See no further discussion. Mr. Shebel, please open the machine and members please proceed to vote. Representative Williams, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative Williams votes yes. Representative Neville, how do you vote?
No.
Representative Neville votes no. Representative Pico, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative Pico votes yes. Representative Sandridge, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative Sandridge votes yes. Representative Soper, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative Soper votes yes. Representative Hooten, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative Hooten votes yes. Representative Tipper, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative Tipper votes yes. Representative Ortiz, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative Ortiz votes yes. Representative Ricks, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative Ricks votes yes. Please close the machine. With 61 aye votes, 3 no votes, and 1 excuse, House Bill 1072 is adopted. Co-sponsors. Sure. Please close the machine. Mr. Shebel, please read the title to House Bill 1044.
House Bill 1044 by Representatives Will and Kennedy, also Senator Bridges, concerning the selection of members of vacancy committees by central committees.
Majority Leader Eskar.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move House Bill 1044 on third reading, final passage.
The question before us is the adoption of House Bill 1044 on third reading and final passage. Madam Speaker Pro Tem Benavides.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And members, I won't say never, but I don't generally come speak on third reading. This bill was very concerning to me. This bill talks about the vacancy committees for party committees, county commissioners, State Board of Education, and basically the language in it says, at a minimum, the members of the jurisdiction's central committee, which right now can be potentially beyond that, depending on how a central committee is set up in a jurisdiction. I was very concerned when we start messing around with vacancy committees. I spoke to my county chair in my party. She had not heard about this bill. No one had contacted her. No one had said anything to her about this. And if we're going to change a process for our parties, I think at a minimum we have to reach out to our parties, all of the ones that are the ones doing vacancy committees. I think this is perhaps a good attempt, because there are some vacancy committees where there are very few, but there are some where it's almost the entire complement of the people that make up the vacancy committee. With that said, I think we're looking for a problem, and they found one, but we don't fix a problem without reaching out to the people that are going to be impacted. And this impacts our party vacancies, and at a minimum, our county parties should have been contacted, and they weren't. So I'm urging a no vote on this bill.
Representative Holtorf.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I don't generally come down on third readings. I had to say that. You know, I'm a little confused on this particular bill, and I'd like for Representative Kennedy to clarify it for me. I think he's very capable as a bill sponsor. But I know when I came into politics, Kimmy Clark Lewis had passed away unexpectedly in December. Within 2 weeks, the House District 64 committee had to put together a vacancy selection. That vacancy selection was scheduled for December 28th of 2019. On that day in Kiowa, Colorado, which isn't that far from the big town, but a long ways from Springfield, a long ways from Holly, a long ways from Eads, a long ways from Otis and Akron. There were over 103 people that showed up of all the counties in that district, and there are 9. It was a winter snowstorm. There were winter storm warnings all across eastern Colorado. And these good patriots came and assembled to go through a vacancy selection process. When I got there, and I had to go the night before, my daughter had to lend me her Jeep Grand Cherokee with four-wheel drive. Not that we don't have four-wheel drives out there. I just didn't have one that had as good a tires as she had, because hers was only a year old. And it was a bad storm. We made it to Lyman. Then the next morning we got up and the storm was worse, and we made it to Kiowa. And the chairman, Bob Lewis, was the House District 64 chairman, was very concerned about a quorum, because you have to have a quorum. Should I smile? Should I smile? Okay. I will next time if you give me a heads up. All right. Getting back to my story without interruption. This particular day, they were worried about a quorum. So it was amazing when at 9 o'clock the vehicles started to roll in. And vehicle after vehicle after vehicle, until there was far beyond a quorum. A quorum was 87 people. They had over 100, 103. Representative Neville was there that day. He can attest to this. It was quite a turnout. Now, one of the things that I need clarification on so I understand, you want your vacancy committee selection to be done with the greatest amount of participation from all the people in that district. One of the things we don't want is the closed door, 3 to 5 people that are all party insiders that make a selection. And some of the people in that committee are actually related to the people that get selected. Might be husband and wife, might be brother and sister. That's insider politics that Colorado and America is sick of, and the people I represent are sick of. They're tired of the insider game. They want representation by the people, of the people, for the people, not an insider game. So what I'm going to ask the bill sponsor to help me understand is, does this bill get away from the insider game? Or does it allow for a plurality of participation where there's plenty of time for that committee to meet, number one, organize, assemble, meet, and carry out the people's business? In my particular case, there were 5 candidates. There were 6 rounds of voting. It started at 9:30 and ended at 4:30. There was a credentials committee, there was a delegate verification committee, and it was probably one of the most pluralistic vacancy committee selections done in recent history. And when I walked away from that, I was so proud of what I witnessed. So, thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I'd like to see, get a little more information from the bill sponsor.
Thank you, Representative Holtorf. Representative Kennedy.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. A few things to say about what I heard from both of the previous 2 speakers. First of all, it's true I didn't call all 64 county parties on the Democratic side, nor did Representative Williams call all 64 county parties on his side. Both of us did, however, reach out to our state party leadership to talk through this, and that was the stakeholding we did primarily. So I just wanted to address that. We did do stakeholding. It was not extensive, but we did touch base with the party leadership on both sides. 2, I do want to thank Representative Williams for inviting me to join him on this bill. This was originally his idea based on abuses he saw on his own side of the aisle happening in certain vacancy committee elections. And whereas I have not seen the same problem on our side of the aisle, I was more than willing to hear him out on his idea and try to help him turn this into a bill that could work a little bit better. He graciously accepted an amendment I asked him to run, and I agreed in turn to sign on as his co-prime sponsor on the bill. To the specific questions from the representative who preceded me here, I do believe that this gets away from the insider politics. The abuses that we're concerned about here are, in certain instances, the vacancy committee may be comprised of as few as 5 people. I saw that not so long ago for a county commissioner in Jefferson County. 5 people got to come together and select a person to finish out a term in the county commissioner office, and there have been a number of examples like this. So this bill does not alter the timelines. I do recognize that sometimes those can be tight timelines, but what this bill does more than anything is guarantees a minimum number of people that will serve on these vacancy committees that at a minimum must be the central committee of that party. So I believe that this makes vacancy committees more small d democratic, ensures a greater number of people participate in electing people to finish out their term.
Thank you, Representative Kennedy. Representative Bradfield.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I also come to the well to speak against this bill. The fact that so many of the county chairs, political chairs, have not been contacted about this bill, I think is troubling. But my biggest objection is that this is something that we really don't need to legislate. We can advise. We can ask that various districts take a good look at their bylaws, that they, in the interest of more inclusion, that they expand their vacancy committee. But do we have to make a law for it? That's pretty heavy-handed. Respectfully, I will be a no. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Bradfield. Representative Gray.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Just a couple of things. One is, this is the way we've been doing business in House District 33 for a decade and a half or so, and nothing bad has come of it. But also, we're going to welcome a new senator. Senator Hendrickson will be here with us very soon, was appointed by a vacancy committee over the weekend. There were over 100 people there who got to choose. But his vote counts just as much as anybody's vote in this room. Anybody who was elected, and frankly, unfortunately, because there are fewer of them over there, maybe a little bit more. And having the person who gets to cast that vote for the rest of the session, and sometimes for a session and then another one, having more voices involved is the nature of democracy. So I can tell you, the sky is not going to fall when we do this, because we've been doing this in my district purposefully for years, because it was raised even before our lieutenant governor, my predecessor, was elected, that as a multi-county district, there could just be a handful of people who chose who gets to cast votes in this chamber. And I think that having as many people as possible getting to have their voice heard on that is really important. And I can promise you the danger here is minimal, because we've been doing it in my district for over a decade now. Thank you.
Is there any further discussion? Representative Holtorf.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And that's not a funny joke, Representative Geithner. So, as I analyze this particular legislation and hear the commentary that we're talking about, I think I just want to point out one thing. Is it state control or local control? There's something to be said for local control. Let people at the lowest level make the decision and the determination. If the state controls everything, if the state controls everything, you live in the Soviet Union. If the state controls everything, that becomes your world. Now, I understand this is not the same, but where do you draw the line? Local control? They have the ability to have bylaws. The districts have district committees. They have bylaws. The counties have county committees. They have bylaws. The state supervises, as I understand it, and I'm not the smartest one in this room about this, the state has bylaws for each party or all parties. And what we try to do, as I understand it, in the representative form of government, is push things down to the lowest level. And what I see this doing is elevating this to a superior level, the state of Colorado level. So as Mary Bradfield came up here with her reservations, I in turn have serious reservations about this. I will be voting no on this bill because I am on the side of local control. Let the local committees figure it out. And I understand that there's some questions there, there's a gray area there, but Representative Gray spoke very eloquently about this. He made a very good point. They took care of it, and they had representation. And I appreciate his wise words when he comes down to the well. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Representative Holtorf. Seeing no further discussion, the question before us is the adoption of House Bill 1044 on third reading and final passage. Mr. Schiebel, please open the machine, and members, please proceed to vote. Representative Williams, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative Williams votes yes. Representative Neville, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative Neville votes yes. Representative Pico, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative Pico votes yes. Representative Sandridge, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative Sandridge votes yes. Representative Soper, how do you vote?
No.
Representative Soper votes no. Representative Hooten, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative Hooten votes yes. Representative Tipper, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative Tipper votes yes. Representative Ortiz, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative Ortiz votes yes. Representative Ricks, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative Ricks votes yes. Please close the machine. With 46 aye votes, 18 no votes, and 1 excused, House Bill 1044 is passed. Co-sponsors. Representative Neville, Representative Tipper, co-sponsor. Please close the machine. Mr. Shebel, please read the title to House Bill 1037.
House Bill 1037 by Representatives Hooton and Van Winkle, also Senators Holbert and Hawkes Lewis, concerning the ability of a person to operate a dual marijuana business at the same location.
Majority Leader Escar.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move House Bill 1037 on third reading, final passage.
The question before us is the adoption of House Bill 1037 on third reading and final passage. Seeing no further discussion, Mr. Shebel, please open the machine and members please proceed to vote. Representative Williams, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative Williams votes yes. Representative Neville, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative Neville votes yes. Representative Pico, how do you vote?
No.
Representative Pico votes no. Representative Sainridge, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative Sainridge votes yes. Representative Soper, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative Soper votes yes. Representative Hooton, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative Hooton votes yes. Representative Tipper, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative Tipper votes yes. Representative Ortiz, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative Ortiz votes yes. Representative Ricks, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative Ricks votes yes. Please close the machine. With 53 aye votes, 11 no votes, and 1 excuse, House Bill 1037 is passed. Co-sponsors. Please close the machine. Mr. Shebel, please read the title of House Bill 1043.
House Bill 1043 by Representative Pico, also Senator Heisey, concerning motor vehicles that operate on the roadway with fewer than 4 wheels in contact with the roadway and in connection therewith, making an appropriation.
Majority Leader Escar.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move House Bill 1043 on third reading, final passage.
Question before us is the adoption of House Bill 1043 on third reading and final passage. See no further discussion, Mr. Shebel, please open the machine and members please proceed to vote. Representative Williams, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative Williams votes yes. Representative Neville, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative Neville votes yes. Representative Pico, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative Pico votes yes. Representative Sainridge, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative Sainridge votes yes. Representative Soper, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative Soper votes yes. Representative Hooton, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative Hooton votes yes. Representative Tipper, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative Tipper votes yes. Representative Ortiz, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative Ortiz votes yes. Representative Ricks, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative Ricks votes yes. Please close the machine. With 62 aye votes, 2 no votes, and 1 excused, House Bill 1043 is passed. Co-sponsors. Please close the machine. Mr. Shebel, please read the title of the House Bill 1060.
House Bill 1060 by Representative Sirota, also Senator Gonzalez, concerning the establishment for contribution limits under the Fair Campaign Practices Act for candidates for school district director and in connection therewith making an appropriation.
Majority Leader Escar.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move House Bill 1060 on third reading, final passage.
Seeing discussion, Representative Bockenfeld. Members, we're on third reading. Please direct your attention to the well.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's an honor to serve with you.
Honor to serve with you as well, Representative Bockenfeld.
Members, House Bill 1060 is a special interest bill. For several years, special interest has enjoyed an unlevel playing field in our educational system. Colorado's been living the big lie, at least in the urban metropolitan areas. That big lie is that we have local control and parental control in our educational system. The facts are this. The special interest has been able to usurp local control, and they've been able to usurp parental control. Remember, the gig's up. Because of remote learning, our constituents have come to realize that it is time to take our schools back. Our constituents have learned that they have to reestablish a level playing field in order to compete with this special interest. And the special interest is scared. And they're scared, and that's why this bill is before you today. Members, vote your conscience. I ask for a no vote on House Bill 1060. This bill creates This bill, if it passes, creates and retains what I'm going to call the Unfair Practices Act. Please vote no.
Representative Beasley.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Parents, this is a bill in an attempt to silence your voice when it comes to educating your children.
And Representative Beasley, let's make sure we keep it to the bill. I'm not, again, I gave Representative Bockenfeld quite a bit of grace. Let's make sure we're keeping the comments in the well to the bill. Representative Beasley.
We, in this body, House of Representatives, attempt to solve practical issues every day that we meet. Last year, we resolved a problem that counties face when it comes to grading roads without having to go check in with 811 Locate every year. We do a lot of practical things. This is not a practical bill that is seeking to solve a problem that plagues people, plagues the citizens, that bothers the parents. This bill does not apply to county sheriffs, does not apply to county clerks, it does not apply to county commissioners, does not apply to the coroner, to the assessor, to surveyor. This bill only applies to limiting the amount of money that an individual can contribute to the school board candidates. Now, why is that? Because one organization does not appreciate that you parents have been able to win school board elections lately. That is why. Now, I have done quite a bit of study on this over the years and learned that the amount of dues withheld from every teacher in every school district, the larger school districts, is about 10 times the amount of money necessary to cover the overhead for the association that they choose to be with. 10 times. It's an unfair tax on their checks.
Representative Beasley, and that has nothing to do with the underlying bill. So let's please keep our comments to the bill that is before us.
Mr. Speaker, it has everything to do with the bill, because with those 10 times, that ends up to be about $20 million that is placed into the school board races every year that's available. And, Mr. Speaker, I will be thrilled to show you the tracer reports that I've been following for 11 years on this, to show you how relevant this is. The amount of money that is taken from the teachers funds those school board races. And what this bill attempts to do is to limit the amount of money that the parents can raise in competition with the $20 million war chest that the association has, that the organization that's headquartered across the street has every year. Not every cycle. It's twice that for every cycle. $20 million every year and $40 million every cycle. What this does is it limits the parents' ability to appeal to well-to-do people who are willing to step in to help them out when they are overwhelmed by a war chest like that. What has happened many times, and I have been very involved in this, is to appeal to people who respect the parents' wishes for how their children are taught and ask them for large sums of money to compete with that automatic war chest. $250,000 in some cases that some of these wealthy folks are willing to contribute. But that barely scratches the surface of the millions that we're up against. That's what this bill is attempting to do. It's not attempting to limit the amount of money contributed to any election but this one election where the other side's been losing and it's bothering them a lot. Parents, this is an attack on your voice. So while I would hope that this body would show its loyalty to you, parents, and vote down this insidious bill, we can at least hope that our governor, if he sees this bill, will veto that and show his support for you, the parents. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Representative Weissman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Before I speak to the bill, I just want to read House Rule 23D, which says that when speaking or debating before the House, a member shall confine his or her remarks to the question under discussion or debate, avoiding personalities. And personally, I would like it if more respect were given to that rule down here on this well. With that said, a little bit of history that I believe leads to 1060, which is before us today. In 2002, the people of the state passed what we colloquially call Amendment 27, now codified as Article 28 of the Colorado Constitution, which is the foundation of our campaign finance law. That measure passed by about 2-1. And even under today's Colorado registration numbers, you would look at that and you would understand correctly that to pass 2-1 statewide, there must have been a very broad amount of support from all parties to get to that kind of statewide measure. Back then, the party that chiefly sits on this side of the aisle was more numerous in registration. So you would look at that 2-1 result in 2002 and you might conclude that there was strong support for the limits set forth in Amendment 27, including by members of that party. Part of what the voters approved by a 2-1 margin back in 2002 was a system whereby natural persons and other entities can donate up to one level, and a small donor committee, which is a somewhat unique type of entity in campaign finance law. There's no analogy in federal law, and there's no analogy that I'm aware of, at least in a lot of other states. A small donor committee is allowed to make larger contributions. The spirit of that is to empower natural persons coming together to act, or in the parlance of our Supreme Court First Amendment jurisprudence, to speak collectively. The way a small donor committee works is only $50 can be given to it by a natural person, and in exchange for that substantial limitation on who can contribute to a small donor committee is allowed to make larger contributions than other types of entities, to us, for example, to other candidates. That is to empower the human, the natural person, the little guy, over the big entity. In the intervening 20 years, the big entity has come to speak even more loudly in campaign finance, much to my chagrin, and aided and abetted by some, I think, very wrongly decided matters by the US Supreme Court. At any rate, that basic architecture of empowering the little guy, acting collectively through the small donor committee, was approved by the voters 2-1 in 2002 in Amendment 27. It was carried forward in HB 19-1007 that a lot of us here voted on. Now, some members are new in the 2020 election, so weren't here for that. This bill does not address county commissioners, county sheriffs, county coroners, other officials that were cited, because it doesn't need to, because that's already in the law, because this legislature already passed that bill, House Bill 19-1007. It's on the statute books. That bill, in keeping with the spirit of Amendment 27, preserved that basic architecture where a small donor committee consisting of the little guy banding together is allowed under law to make a larger contribution. That's what we're carrying forward here, in my estimation. Don't mean to speak for the sponsor. You can vote no on that, but there's this history of the people of the state approving that basic architecture of trying to empower the small donor by a margin of 2 to 1. The larger money that was alluded to, the so-called independent money, that is not impacted by this bill because it can't be, because of a variety of U.S. Supreme Court decisions construing, and I believe misconstruing, the First Amendment of the Constitution of the United States. At any rate, that is out here. The premise of this bill, which I strongly support, is that there ought to be reasonable limits on so-called hard dollars moving in politics. Parents of whatever persuasion who want to donate $10, $100, couple $100 are not impacted. In my community, I don't believe parents are clamoring to make $25,000 contributions. Most parents can't. We are a working class community. The ability of people to contribute to candidates of their choosing up to reasonable levels is preserved in this bill. The ability of people to band together, create an entirely new small donor committee if they like, speak more loudly in that way of collective action is preserved in this bill. I think this is a small step in the very large ongoing quest for reasonable campaign finance reform and restoring faith and trust in our politics, and I urge a yes vote.
Is there further discussion? Representative Carver.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise in opposition to this bill. To me, watching recent school board elections over the last couple of cycles, with the massive amount of out-of-state 527 and dark money, most horrifying, quite frankly, in our whole campaign system, not just this bill, is the anonymous 501c4 money. And to see if you are running for a school board position in Colorado and you are looking to raise enough money to compete, the context in which you are running, if you're running for a Denver school board or some other school board elections, is you look at the entire political context to determine how much money you're going to have to raise. You necessarily have to take into account what we have seen in Colorado with this huge amount of dark money, 527 money, coming in, a lot of it from out of state, trying to influence our school board elections. If this bill were just a standalone and we didn't have the political environment we're dealing in right now, my vote might be different. But quite frankly, what this bill is handicapping and limiting is a candidate's ability to raise money for their campaign, a lot of it within state, in order to be able to compete, given all the other money that is flowing into these school board elections. And that's why I'm coming down on thirds, speaking against this. I find our school board elections and how they're financed actually quite horrifying. And at some point, we also need to deal with 501c4 across the board, which is a huge corrupting influence.
Representative Sirota.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, this is just a common sense bill to close one of these last remaining spaces where we have no limits. As has been noted, Amendment 27 was passed by the voters, and the voters said, yes, we think contribution limits to individuals make sense here in Colorado. We all operate under them. This bill mirrors what we set in statute from our bill in 2019 for candidates for county office. I share my colleagues' concern about the horrifying nature of how our school board elections are run, which is why this bill is here. And my constituents year after year continue to ask me, when are you going to fix this problem with school boards? And so we have come here with this very reasonable, I mean, the limits are still pretty high. $2,500 for an individual, $25,000 for a small donor committee, which, just to remind you, that's 500 natural persons making a max contribution of $50 for a year. That's a lot of people. And you know, you can have a parent group that can come together and form their own small donor committee, and they can raise money from other parents. This isn't limiting influence of parents. What it is addressing is the real problem, which is our voters' lack of belief that there is integrity in the process. When they see that an individual can write a check for $10,000, $20,000, even $40,000 to contribute to an individual, people out there wonder, what's going on? Why is somebody writing a check for so much money for this local volunteer unpaid position? And the U.S. Supreme Court continues to say that you can put contribution limits on candidates for office for the express purpose of addressing corruption or even the appearance thereof. That's what this is addressing. It's really common sense. It's pretty simple. It's closing one of these last spaces without contribution limits. And it's not preventing people from participating in the process. People can still participate in the process. They can still raise significant contributions. $2,500 is a lot. We can't raise that much from an individual. But, you know, to run for these offices, it can be hard to, you know, to come up with enough money to be competitive. So that's why we set those county office numbers where we did. That's why we are mirroring the school board limits in the same space. And I ask for your support. It's just common sense. Our voters are asking for this. They're actually asking for a lot more. And this is, I think, the bare minimum that we can do.
Representative Bockenfeld, this is your last remaining time on third reading. You have 7 minutes and 43 seconds remaining.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I concur. The citizens in this state did vote in Amendment 27 with all the good intentions of creating a level playing field. That was their intentions at the time. But then some special interests figured out a workaround to create an unlevel playing field. And it wasn't until those parents sitting at home with remote learning that started pushing back on some of the things they were seeing and wanted to replace their school boards did they learn there was an unlevel playing field. So when you have special interests that can force their members to contribute to a cause that they may or may not support, and they get not only contractual pressure to make that contribution to the special interest.
Representative Bockenfeld.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, I see that one of the representatives gave you a signal that you should stop me, so I'd like to understand a little more.
Hey, I have given you and other members during this debate great latitude. If you want to talk about broad special interests, the way that Representative Carver did in the well, that is fine. When we start to narrow it down into a place where you're impugning the motives of how people are going to vote on this particular piece of legislation, then we are crossing a line. So let's keep the comments more general and more to the bill that's before us. Thank you very much. Representative Bockenfeld.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I understand your point, but my point is the unlevel playing field that has been created, and you have constituents, which are parents, who have a vested interest that's trying to create a level playing field. And what this bill does is this bill reestablishes the unlevel playing field that was there before. And I think it's important that the parents out there that have a concern, and as complicated as this bill is, even though they're trying to make it simple, it's creating the unlevel playing field that parents feel that they need in order to retain their local control and their parental control over their school boards, which is, I believe, one of the foundations here in the state of Colorado. I still ask for a no vote.
Further discussion. Representative Larson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, or Mr. Speaker, my apologies. We're on third reading here. Members, I just want to further echo what Representative Carver came down and said, because I do think that this bill is well-intentioned, and I think the spirit of what we voted for in 2002 was to increase transparency, remove the corrupting influence of money from politics. I think any reasonable observer of the last 2 decades can say that that did not happen. And unfortunately, what this bill will do will push more money into the dark spaces where it is unaccountable. The stated goals of this bill, I think, would frankly be furthered by not passing it. And I will give you an anecdotal example we had in Jefferson County here. This last election cycle, we had an individual who did not live in Jefferson County give tens of thousands of dollars to 3 members of a specific slate. Now, that was a huge amount of money, and there was a little bit of scrutiny because of it. Didn't change the outcome of the election. Well, I mean, perhaps the money did, but the scrutiny on those particular donations didn't change the outcome of that particular election because those members won. But at least we knew that those members had taken money from that individual. Now, they had also received substantial contributions from these small donor committees and from the special interests, but that didn't matter because at least we could look and see and say this person took tens of thousands of dollars from this individual and these groups, and we knew who it was, and it was out there in the open. If this bill were to pass, school board elections will start to look just like our state house elections, where the vast majority of the money comes in through 504s, 527s, IECs. What's worse is that at least in our election, people know what our party affiliation is. So they can look at the ballot and say, well, that's a Republican or that's a Democrat, and they can make that kind of informed decision based upon that. In school board elections, there is no party identifier. And largely, one of the only mechanisms that people have to identify with what political persuasion that people are aligning are who they are receiving donations from. And I'm not saying that there's not going to be any hard side dollar donations. Indeed, there's a pretty hefty incentive to get $25,000 in small donor committee donations that I suspect one side will not forego. But ultimately, what this bill will do is it will take more money that was transparent, that was going directly to candidates where people could at least know where the source of funding was, and shovel it into an IEC. It will further corrupt our political process. It will further degrade people's trust in politics in the process, and I think will continue us down a road that we've been going down for the last 20 years. So again, I really do appreciate what Representative Sirota is trying to do here, but I think this is pushing us further down a road that we are already pretty far down, that clearly is not working for the electorate, and I don't think this does a thing to solve it. I think it makes it a little bit worse. So in all seriousness, members, think about it. And if you could honestly say after voting for this bill, you feel like this is going to remove the corrosive influence of politics, and you think that, oh, people that are going to give $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 are not going to contribute to an IEC or a non-accountable dark money operation, then by all means vote for it.
Let's not impugn anyone's motives.
Mr. Speaker, I appreciate that. I'm not impugning motives. I'm just saying that I think that that's, I just ask yourself that question because I don't think it will. I think once this bill passes, IECs will get more money. And I think that there will be the same amount of money, if not more, in these elections. I think the only difference will be that it will be less accountable and less transparent, and people will not know the origins of it. So I urge a no vote.
Representative Bacon.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, I just wanted to come and share some notes from some families. Many of you know I served on the state's largest school board, for the largest school district, and I ran in 2017 to the most expensive school board race in the state. The issues that our families had around what was going on in their neighborhoods and what they were learning spanned way before the pandemic. The thing that was really important for me as a candidate, because I was someone who did receive maybe one or two larger donations, but I certainly didn't raise the most. In fact, I was outraised by about $50,000 on the hard side. But in my neighborhood where I represented, the median income of parents and families was $12,000 less than the median income in the rest of Denver. 20% of my community has families living in poverty. And so when we're talking about family voice and parent voice in their education, one of the reasons why my race was so expensive and why it was so difficult is because our families felt like their voices weren't showing up when it came to the education of their kids. In particular, we saw high schools and schools closed, and we saw people say who kids should be that did not come from their mouths. And so one of the things that was really important to me is that families did come together to donate, but I had to tell them it was okay that they didn't have $100 to give, that they didn't have $5,000 to give, or that they didn't have $10,000 to give. They had $5 to give. And if they could have given more, they would have. But for more than 15 years, they had been outspent by people who didn't live in the neighborhood to determine for them. And even though we're going to have different conversations about what different communities feel like we should learn, I just don't think it's fair to say that that this bill would support parents being included in school board races, because I know they weren't. And so if we're going to talk about leveling playing fields, let's just be honest about that and whose neighborhoods can do more financially. But just because someone can do more financially doesn't mean that they love their kids more. Or if they can't, that they love their kids less. But given circumstances, we should do as best as we can to give people the opportunity to fight for their kids, just like anyone else could. And to keep people who, quite frankly, may not even know what their kids endure every day to outspend them and determine what their kids need. So again, just wanted to share that, having lived through very expensive school board races, which quite honestly, the only reason they got that high is because people were willing to spend money to push it up that high. And we're talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars. And if there were some limitations, and quite frankly, also standing here as someone who ran a House race, nothing in comparison to a school board race. Nothing. The last thing I'll say is, even on the soft side, there is transparency and accountability, because I had to be held as well. But I also wouldn't call our voters naive that they can't figure some of those things out. And so again, just wanted to put a voice on here that we don't patronize people, particularly since we're talking about politics and special interest. Because all families, whether they can give $5,000 or $5,000, care about their kids. And let's just be honest about who can and who can't, and where we should focus on energies. So thank you.
Representative Assistant Minority Leader Geithner.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, I rise in opposition to this bill, and I've heard some interesting debate. First off, I don't know that I would think, and certainly I don't think any of my members would think, that the love of a child is dependent upon the amount of donations to a candidate. So, anyways, I'll start with that. I do say, school board races are some of the quickest elections that we see in Colorado. Petitions are typically available for the individual that intends to run sometime maybe late July, early August, and then the election is November. That's about 90 days plus to get someone maybe that has never participated in a campaign or run for office or anything else, their name and their platform and what they are, what they're running for, what they intend to do in front of the voters. And I think that what I've seen this last election cycle, I worked, around a lot of these areas, and it was the amount of parents that were involved this time around and compared to last election cycles. It was tremendous. And it's interesting that this is putting limitations on the individual, and that individual is by and large most likely the parent in this specific case. So I agree with my colleagues that have come up before on the right that say that this is a way to limit their voice. I absolutely agree with that. I don't see how we can't look at it as such. You have money that comes in from out of state. You have special interest money. You have dark money. Call them 50 or 527s, 501c4s, you name it. This will channel more of that money that's out there into those organizations where you don't know where they're coming from. It will welcome more outside spending into Colorado. Absolutely. And so I think that if we're going to recognize what we saw in this last election cycle, and that was the amount of parents that were involved, I think that this does limit their voice. And so I would urge a no vote on this. Parents can do all sorts of things in terms of leading their schools in the door, whether it's knocking doors, writing checks, giving money, stuffing envelopes, you name it. We shouldn't take those options off the table when it comes to our parents. If anything, we should make sure that we get out of the way, because they're the ones that fully understand the impact of education as it pertains to their child and their family. So I would urge a no vote. Thank you.
Is there any further discussion on House Bill 1060? Seeing none. The question before us is the adoption of House Bill 1060 on third reading and final passage. Mr. Shebel, please open the machine, and members, please proceed to vote. Representative Williams, how do you vote?
No.
Representative Williams votes no. Representative Neville, how do you vote?
No.
Representative Neville votes no. Representative Pico, how do you vote?
No.
Representative Pico votes no. Representative Sandridge, how do you vote?
No.
Representative Sandridge votes no. Representative Soper, how do you vote?
No.
Representative Soper votes no. Representative Hooten, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative Hooten votes yes. Representative Tipper, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative Tipper votes yes. Representative Ortiz, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative Ortiz votes yes. Representative Ricks, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative Ricks votes yes. Please close the machine. With 41 aye votes, 23 no votes, and 1 excused, House Bill 1060 is adopted. Co-sponsors. Representative Hooten, Tipper, Ortiz, co-sponsor. Please close the machine. Majority Leader Escar.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to lay over the balance of the calendar until tomorrow, February 23rd.
Seeing no objection, the balance of the calendar will be laid over until Wednesday, February 23rd. That brings us to announcements and introductions. Representative Exum.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I made a mistake. My bill, my exciting bill, will be tomorrow. But a more exciting bill would be today with Representative Tatone, Senate Bill 15.
Very good. Thank you, Representative Exum. Any other announcements or introductions? Seeing none. Majority Leader Escar.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move the House stand in recess until later today.
Seeing no objection, the House will stand in recess until later today.